All right, so we are now ready to talk about converting color images into black and white. I guess the first thing I'll mention is you can certainly get an image that is black and white, but you do have to do 2 of these for your first assignment. So I'm going to go over 3 different methods for how to take a color image and convert it to black and white, and I encourage you to try at least one of these methods on one of the images. So obviously I could get an image, and just as I did in the last video, I could right click and I could copy the image and then go over to Photoshop. This time I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut, Control N. Control N. And that is going to bring up the same interface I saw before when I went to File, New. I'm going to keep my clipboard selected as the option and hit Create. And that's going to create a document the same size of whatever I've copied. And then I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut, Control V. But I could also go up to Edit and Paste if you don't like the keyboard shortcuts. And this brings in my image. But now I'm just going to take a quick example here of what can go wrong when it seems really easy to just bring in a black and white image. Well, what could possibly go wrong? I'm going to take my paintbrush, and don't worry, I'm going to go over these tools in the next video, and I'm going to try to choose a color here such as red, and I'm going to start painting over, and if you notice, it's just coming in as gray. All right, well, this kind of brings me to how do you convert an image that is color to grayscale and then back again to color. So this image, when I brought it in, it actually was a grayscale image. And how do I know that? If you go up to the tab for any image that you have open, you're going to see a bunch of information that's really relevant. Starting with the name, I haven't titled it, so it's just Untitled 2. The percent in which we're viewing it, that's really important to know or to make note of. I am seeing this at 100%, so this is its true size. This one, for example, is at 50% because the image is so large that if I view it at 100%, I can't really see the whole thing. So what Photoshop will do is it scales things down that are large so you can see them at a smaller size. You just have to be aware of that because you may think this is its actual size. So back over to this one. The next thing it tells me is which layer I'm on. I'm on layer 1. If I look at my layers panel, I can see that's true. And then this is the key. It says this is grayscale, and that's why I can't add any color. So if you got a black and white image and you opened it up and it's RGB here, you are all set to go with the next step for this homework. If you did it and it's grayscale or bitmap, if it also says that, this is what we have to do. We go up under Image, Mode, and we're going to change the color mode. It's currently grayscale, and we're going to change it to RGB. So indexed is the other one. If you see that, that means it's a bitmap, and it also will only be in black and white. So we've changed this to RGB, and now it's asking me, do I want to keep these 2 layers? Meaning, do I want to flatten? So this would just become 1 layer. Do I want to cancel, like forget it, I don't want to do any of this, get me out of here? Or just make it RGB but don't flatten, and that's the one I'm going to choose. And so now it's RGB, and now when I take my paintbrush and I paint over it, I get red. Which, by the way, brings me to the history panel. I had mentioned in the interface, I have my history panel docked over here as this little icon. If you don't have that, if you don't have it, then you can go up under Window and look for it, and you can history. Mine is checked, that means it's already open, and you can pull it up that way. If you had a panel and it's docked and you want to undocked, and you want to dock it again, when you bring it over and you see how when you hover, it kind of gives you a deep blue bar, and that means when you let go of it, it's going to become docked in that spot. All right, so what does the history panel do? It records the last 25 steps that you made. So each brush stroke that I make is a step. And if I want to go backwards and get rid of those things, so it's basically an undo, I can click on that state and it temporarily deletes the last 2 states. So I'm going to go back to the state where I was at RGB color. But I still have those gray marks, so I actually need to go back all the way to the state where I pasted this. And now you can see these states are still here. They're just grayed out. I could always jump back and say, no, I'm good to go from here. or from this state, but I'm going to go back to this one, and now I'm going to make that change again about switching it to RGB, and just watch what happens to those other grayed out states. They're gone. So you can jump backwards in your history panel, but then as soon as you do your next step, you've erased everything that you had previously gone through. All right, so what if I took this image, which is RGB, and I want to make it grayscale? I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go up to Image, Mode, and I'm going to change it to grayscale. It's asking me the same thing. I'm going to say don't flatten. And then it is grayscale, so I can't do anything with it. So now I'm going to go back to Image, Mode, and change it to RGB. And now I can add color to it. Okay, so that's kind of the first or second method, depending on if you consider the first method just being simply opening up an already black and white image. So I'm going to go back in my history panel so I can get this at its color state in RGB and show you another way. Under Image Adjustments, we'll spend a decent amount of time in here. There is an adjustment called black and white, and this is what I would call a destructive edit, meaning it's going to permanently change this to black and white. But that's the same thing when we changed the color mode. So for this first assignment, that's okay. For changing it to black and white. For adding the colors and the paints that I'll go over in the next video, it can't be done destructively. It has to be non-destructive. So I've now made it black and white. I've actually affected this layer. This layer is now black and white. And there's not much that you need to do with this panel, but I'll say if you want to take a moment and look at some of the presets like maximum white, you can change the level of contrast of how it makes it black and white. And once you've found the one that you like, you can click OK. And now you'd be ready to go on to the next step. All right, I'm going to now show you the last method for changing your image to black and white. And this one is non-destructive. This is jumping ahead a little bit. It's almost the same thing. I just went up to Image Adjustment and I added the adjustment black and white. But this time I'm going to go to Layer, Adjustment Layer, Black and White. So this is pretty cool. It's asking me for a name. I'm going to click OK. If you see, this is the same panel I had before with the presets, and I'll choose that one I like, the maximum white. But if you look over here in my Layers panel, this adjustment is on its own layer. So this is called a non-destructive edit. If I click on the eyeball, I can see it just temporarily turns off this layer, and I can see my layer 1 underneath, and that it's still in its original state of being in color. So that's pretty cool. A non-destructive edit, changing it to be black and white as its own layer. So again, you have two of these you have to do for your assignment. So please experiment, and with each one, try a different method.